Hey there, and welcome to the Big Apple School podcast. My name is Sam.
And my name is Steve.
And today we're asking what's the crack about tea versus coffee. So we're going to find out what a typical cup of tea, cup of coffee is. So maybe you'll learn what those things are. We'll talk about our history with each drink, or tea journey and coffee journey through life. How they make us feel. It's the way you make me feel. There's a song about that somewhere. I'm not singing it properly. The advantages and disadvantages of each of them, the varieties of both of them, the marketing connected with them, and we'll ask the question, which one is best in our opinion? So we're going to get into really the nitty-gritty about these two wonderful drinks, very much enjoyed throughout the world. Is there anywhere where they don't drink tea or coffee?
I believe the Belgians don't drink tea. I think they think it's rather poisonous.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the French aren't very keen on tea either.
Right.
But I think other than that, apart from America, the Americans don't know how to make tea. Yeah,
it's generally, if you speak to someone from the UK, they'll say, couldn't get a good cup of coffee or a cup of tea in America, yeah. Haven't had that experience yet, but yeah.
But I think it's pretty universal. I think the Russians and the English are the biggest tea drinkers, according to some statistics I found.
Certainly, I think my wife, who is Russian, loves her tea and varieties of it too. So I am on the side of coffee. I'll tell you now. I'm going to argue coffee is better, or at least try to, and see how I get on. Whereas you're more of a tea lover, right?
Yes, I drink more tea, although I don't dislike coffee, and I do drink it. But I think I could do without coffee, but I couldn't do without tea.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't do without coffee. The idea of that makes me scared, scares the life out of me. Okay, well, let's get into it, and we'll have a little bit of a debate, but we won't fight.
No.
What's a typical cup of tea? I'll let you answer this.
Well, in England, there's always a lot of conflict about tea and which tea to drink and which is better. But I suppose it divides between black tea, Indian tea, as we call it in England, and China tea.
Right.
China tea was the drink of England, but of course it's much more expensive.
Right. Okay.
But now the typical cup of tea in Britain, I suppose in working homes, working class, it will be made strong with milk and sugar.
Right, yeah. Maybe one sugar, maybe two sugars, or no sugar.
Or three sugars even.
Yeah. They generally, in the UK, it's with milk.
I think so.
If it's black tea.
Yes.
I think it's not to say that you can't have it black with no milk, but I think people will look at you and think, that's strange.
It's unusual to drink it without milk, unless you have Earl Grey, which is quite popular.
Some of them, and green tea you wouldn't add milk. Where do you typically enjoy a cup of tea?
Well, I always, if I'm at my home in France, I always get up in the morning and make a pot of tea straight away.
Mm-hmm. And pot of tea?
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
And I'm drinking that throughout the morning.
Right. And do you keep it warm on the cooker?
No, I do what I've learned to do it like the Russian way. I let it go cold and put it into warm it up, like concentrate. But not just for the morning. If it goes cold, I heat it up. But the only thing is, about 11 o'clock, I make my morning coffee. That's the only time I will make coffee.
11 o'clock seems very late for me to make coffee. I couldn't survive till 11. Okay, so a typical cup of coffee. And I guess I'll answer this one. Well, I'm not speaking about myself, but many coffee drinkers enjoy it with maybe cream or creamed milk of some kind, like a latte, for example, or just with milk, black coffee with milk. So I guess for majority of people in my experience, or at least in the UK anyway, it's you get your coffee granules from a jar, you put in a teaspoonful, you heat up your kettle and you mix that in with your coffee granules, and then you add your milk. and Bob's your uncle, as we say. and you've got your cup of coffee. Maybe you want to sweeten it. You put in a sugar or two and stir that around, give it a nice mix, and slop it down your throat. And nice, warm, rich, wonderful tones. Sweet, maybe a bitterness to it if you haven't added sugar. And yeah, delicious. And you can enjoy it, of course, in your home. You might drink it in the office, which you would do with tea, of course, too. But maybe you'll go to a cafe as well. And yeah, so, well, in that respect, tea and coffee are the same. But it's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but there aren't so many tea houses. Most places are called cafes, which is after the word coffee. Am I right?
I suppose they have tea rooms, don't they? So for afternoon tea, but that's in more sort of tourist places.
It's not so common, I think. It does happen. Yeah.
In a cafe, you tend to drink it. But talking about the way you make coffee, I never make coffee like that.
Yeah.
I always make it the way my grandmother made it for me when I was a little boy.
And how's that? Tell us more.
Well, she took the beans and ground them in I still have the same machine.
With a big handle,
With a big handle.
You turn it round.
And it
kind of like starting an old car.
Yes, it's like a crank handle. And then you can adjust the blades to make
fine
it fine
or coarse.
Coarse.
Okay.
And then it drops into a tray, and then I use a pot.
Yes.
I put it into like a teapot, a coffee pot,
right?
With a hot water concentrate, and then I boil milk, and not boil it, just heat it, because I don't like the skin. And then I put the milk in, pour the coffee into the cup, and the hot milk, and a spoon of brown sugar.
Brown sugar.
Yes.
Why not white sugar?
I think it wouldn't go so well with coffee. I think
you're a connoisseur, really. I'm impressed.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So, we're gonna get into that because we've talked about the typical cup of tea and coffee, but we're gonna talk about our tea journey and our coffee journey, because I have a bit of a journey with coffee, and a little bit with tea actually too. But tell me more about your tea journey.
Well, my tea journey really began at the same time of my coffee journey. It was my grandmother. She was also a connoisseur of tea. She ordered tea from London.
Right.
And she mixed it into different mixtures.
Right.
And would make it in a pot. And usually she had China tea. And put 3 spoons of China tea and 1 spoon of black tea.
Okay, right.
And right from being a small boy, she made me tea like this with milk in a China teacup. And I still have this China teacup.
Right.
And
it's like porcelain. Yeah. People might know it as porcelain.
Yes, porcelain, China porcelain. Yes. And of course, I don't always make tea like that. But I do like to make tea with leaves.
Is it with a strainer, or how is the tea inside the water and you drink it with the?
Well, you put the water. The tea is in the water, and usually it sinks to the bottom.
Okay.
But you can use a strainer if you don't want any tea leaves at all.
Yeah.
But the tea leaves, when they're wet, will go to the bottom of the cup.
Right. So it's not a problem when you're drinking it.
And that's when the gypsies read the tea leaves, you see.
Right, yeah. That's we're not allowed to call them gypsies. They're
traveling
people. Traveling people. I don't know. Okay. Hopefully we'll be okay. Right, so you've had a bit of a tea, and that's where you got your method for making coffee too. And has it changed over the years?
It's only changed if I don't have the time to do it. If I want a quick cup of coffee, I usually, I sometimes have coffee from the granules, but I still like it with milk.
Yeah.
Tea, I'll drink with tea bags if I don't have time to make normal tea, or I'm in the office or at school or something like that.
Punjana or Tetley? It's very popular. Or maybe they don't have them in France, I guess.
I get my tea from England, and it can be bought in Novosibirsk, actually. It's called Taylor's of Harrogate, Yorkshire tea.
I think I've seen that, yeah. In fact, it's probably in my flat. My wife has it, probably.
And they have quite a good market in tea in Russia, Taylor's.
Lots of different varieties too, and different companies.
But most people drink, I think Tetley is quite popular.
It's a popular tea company in the UK, absolutely. Well, let me tell you about my tea and coffee journeys. 2 separate journeys, really. Well, I don't remember when I started to drink coffee or tea. I think my mum gave me coffee as a sort of, not very young boy, but maybe 10 or something like that. And when I was going to school. And we had a flask, for keeping hot liquids, thermos, as some might know it. And she gave me a lovely milky coffee, very milky. And I really liked this. Oh, this lovely, it was more milk than coffee.
Yes.
But it was very soothing and very refreshing, and I really liked it. So I enjoyed that. I remember that. But I suppose when I really started to get into tea and coffee would have been when I started working, and particularly in an office. I would have drunk a lot of tea and coffee. I would have started out, maybe a coffee in the morning at home, and then go to work and maybe get another coffee, maybe 2 if I was feeling particularly tired. And then I would have started into tea the rest of the day. I would have drank tea, maybe 2 or 3 cups of tea, depending on my mood or depending on workload or whatever. But go and get a wee cup of tea, come back to your desk, keep working. So I would have drank quite a lot of tea. And then I started to drink tea as an alternative I found that amount of caffeine and stuff, I felt a bit not focusing, not concentrating.
It's a headache, I think.
Maybe even a headache at times, yeah, absolutely. And so I tended then, I sort of thought, well, less coffee, more tea, and less of the black tea and more green tea. And I started to get into green tea, and I heard that it was quite healthy and all of that, and cleansing, and I don't know how much of that is true or not, but I got into drinking green tea. And then, of course, I got into a gateway drug, they say. One thing leads to another. I got into fruit teas. Nothing wrong at all. So herbal and fruit tea. So I started to drink a wide variety. If you opened the drawer in my desk, you would have found different fruit teas and all kinds. And then I honestly don't know why, and I still to this day don't know why, and it's been years and years, maybe 6-7 years or more. One day I just woke up and I was like, I don't like tea. And I don't drink tea regularly now at all. And it's not that I can't drink it, it's not that I hate it. I just don't enjoy it so much. And so I actually drank tea at the weekend. But I rarely drink it. I rarely choose to drink it. It's never my first choice. But if it's the only option available for whatever reason as a guest, or if it's the only thing on the table that's left or whatever, I will drink it. And I don't dislike it, but I don't know. I just never choose to drink it, really. And I don't know what changed my mind about that. But that was my tea journey. It's kind of over. But my wife still loves tea, and so I
think she'll be educating you back into tea.
Maybe
before too long.
Maybe I don't know. But I drink a lot of water instead. I still drink. I have 1 cup of coffee. I try not to drink too much coffee to avoid any problems. And I drink 1 cup of coffee, and the rest of the day I'll drink juice or water, mostly water. And I'm happy enough. To be honest, I can happily drink water over tea. But I guess if it's a cold day and if it's the only option, tea is great in that regard. But
yeah.
Now, are you okay for me? I'm going to tell you my coffee journey.
Okay.
So about coffee is, and I started out with granules, as most people do. And I drank granules for years and years and years. No problem, although I think it does make me a bit drowsy, especially if I drink a few of them. And then one day it was sort of recommended to me. It recommended me a few times to drink filter coffee. And actually my younger brother had a filter coffee machine. And I occasionally drank one of his coffees. And my mum actually had or has a latte machine, but that's not quite the same, you know. It's quite similar, I think, in one respect to the granules, this latte machine. But my brother's machine is quite good, and there is a difference. But I never really fully appreciated it, because I only got the odd coffee here and there when he made it for me, you know. So I didn't really use the machine myself. But then there was an old coffee machine that was spare in our house. And I decided that I would try this out one summer, and I would try this coffee machine. I got some filter coffee, pre-ground, and I started out with this coffee machine, and I started to drink it, and I realized that I can drink a few cups, and it doesn't give me a headache. It doesn't make me feel drowsy. Not to say that there's no effect. There is an effect, but I think it was not as strong, not as pronounced, and there's much more of a flavor. It's very different. I'll say this, it's not necessarily that granules are bad, but filter coffee is very, very different. I think it's maybe richer, the flavor.
I think so, yes.
And so I really enjoyed, and to this day really enjoy filter coffee, but now I grind my own beans as well. So I almost feel like a connoisseur of coffee now. But yeah.
Yes, well, usually I say I always grind my own beans, but it's quite difficult. Only at home I do it in France.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not so easy when you're traveling.
Not so easy when you're traveling to make it.
Yeah. How does a good cup of tea or coffee make you feel?
Well, in the morning, it's very. I think that's the best time. It makes me feel better. If I get up feeling rather not very active, by the time I've drunk 2 cups of tea, I'm raring to go, as we say.
Yeah, so I'm in my coffee. I stick to 1 good mug of coffee, not too strong, and you know what? I enjoy the experience of drinking it. I sit and relax, or stand and relax at times, and I drink my coffee. And that to me is my morning ritual. I read some as well when I'm doing it. I read the Bible too, or do other things, whatever I'm busy at in the morning. And it's my morning ritual to do that with my cup of coffee. I enjoy the flavor. Some people say, you know, I just want it for the effect, like keep me awake or whatever. But for me, it's the flavor too. I enjoy it. So it's not only the effect, which is great, but the flavor and the heat. You know, it's warm, it's rich, it's flavorful, and I very much enjoy it. And I take it black now, I should have said. So I used to drink with milk. I used to add sugar, but now black coffee, but not as strong as I used to.
Well, I have it black if I'm in France and I go, say, to a restaurant, because that's how they serve it after a meal.
Right.
Rather like espresso, but it's not
it's
exactly
quite strong,
the same.
Mm-hmm. I think I've tried one of those actually, and I've tried Arabic as well, and they're very, very small and very strong.
That's right. I don't really like it, but I'll drink it.
Yeah. It's not quite the same as what I'm used to, So what is good? And we're speaking medically maybe as well, and not just medically, about tea and about coffee. What are the good things about it?
Well, I think the doctors are always changing their mind about tea and coffee. You hear that too much coffee is bad for your head and bad for your blood, and now they've said that you should drink coffee for that effect.
Right.
Tea, I think, is generally good for you as long as you don't drink it all day.
Yeah.
I suppose if you're drinking it all day,
you can get the shakes if you're addicted, I think.
Yes.
To either of them,
but I think it's good for health generally. Right. And especially for making you feel better. It has that effect, I think, of boosting your...
Give you that lift, energy lift. Well, so some would say weight loss from coffee and maybe from tea too, but because it stops your craving, stops your... but I think if you overdrink, it can actually have a negative effect, and you can actually put on weight. So I think in moderation, at least, you have the energy boosts. Antioxidant, I think it's particularly for tea. And both of them might prevent against different diseases like heart diseases and cancer. So potentially certain diseases they might prevent against. So in moderation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, who knows for sure, but I'm not a scientist or a medical doctor or anything, but I think in moderation, as in everything in moderation, I think in moderation are absolutely fine and good for you, and they've advantages.
I know some people disagree, but I always think, and I was always told, that in hot weather, tea is good for it cools you down. If you drink hot tea in hot weather, you do feel cooler afterwards.
It sounds illogical, doesn't it?
But it works mad. For me. It does sort of restore.
I've heard that because it starts you to sweat, that can actually help you cool down. I'm not sure so it works for you.
Yes, if I was feeling very hot and tired, I would have a cup of tea.
Yeah, and it refreshes.
Rather than water.
Yeah, so it's true that there's something refreshing about tea. And I remember I was visiting a city once in England, and I'd been walking all day. I got a bit lost, actually, in Leeds. And I finally got to my hotel, and I got myself a cup of tea after being out. It was the summer, and it was fairly hot. It wasn't super hot. And I got this cup of tea, and you know what? It was really refreshing. And it was quite late in the evening, and I decided to get another cup of tea. I thought that was so nice. I'll have another one. And I didn't sleep properly after that, actually, because, tea with coffee also has caffeine, which keeps us awake, or potentially keeps us, depending on the person. And this is a disadvantage, of course, not an advantage. Depending on, maybe it's an advantage if you want to stay awake. But tea has a slow release of caffeine, and it can happen sort of throughout the day. So it gives you that energy, but it lasts throughout the day, I think. So whereas coffee is generally an energy boost, and then you can go down again if you've nothing else to pick up your energy, you can go down again. So. It could be an advantage depending on when you drink it, but it could be a disadvantage too if you want to sleep. So any more disadvantages that you can think of?
I think Russian people especially don't give coffee to children because they think it's a drug. They would give that other drink, chicory. Coffee.
Yeah.
Like at children's camps, they always give chicory.
I know what you're speaking about. Yeah, that's right.
It's the same in Russian, I think.
It's from a plant, isn't it?
Yes.
Another, like a flower or something.
And in England, it was very popular because coffee was very expensive about 20 years ago for some reason. I can't remember why.
Right.
And everybody started drinking chicory coffee or half coffee and half chicory.
But there's still caffeine in that, isn't there?
Yes, I believe there is.
Yeah.
But not as much. I think it's much milder.
Mm-hmm. As well, I would say. So, my parents would have been reluctant to give us coffee very, very young. As I say, I got it maybe I was 10 or 12 when I got it, but I wouldn't have got it when I was very young unless it was really, really watered down. With much more milk than tea or much more milk than coffee. Another negative might be the dependence. I think you can become. I don't think
addicted to it.
You can become addicted to tea and coffee, especially if you don't notice maybe any negative effects on you. You can tend to maybe drink too much of it, and you don't. You could have a real problem if you want to cut it down, because it could be, if you're not drinking it in moderation, it could be bad for you, and your doctor may want you to cut it down or cut it out, and I think you could have a real problem. So it's an addictive thing.
Yes, I think it is, yes.
As I said, it can keep you awake, and it can actually, maybe it's more coffee than tea, but it can give you anxiety, and it can give you heart palpitations.
Yes, I've heard
depending
about
on the
that.
person, yeah. So you could get heart palpitations where your heart's beating too quickly from drinking too much coffee. So I think you really have to be careful about how much you do drink.
Yeah, I think a one or two cups at once is okay, but I know some people drink it all day, and it's not good
it's
for
quite
them.
Normal, I think.
Yeah.
It's quite common, particularly in the UK, to drink tea throughout the day.
Yes.
And you could maybe get too much and overdo it. So what varieties, right? We'll talk about varieties, tea and varieties of coffee. What varieties of tea can you tell me about? I mean, different types.
Well, there's a traditional China tea, which in Britain, of course, when tea first was introduced, it was all China. And Lapsang Souchong and, Earl Grey came later, but there was these sort of delicate flavoured teas that come from China, which are still quite popular.
Yeah.
But about 2 or 3 times the price of
right.
And when India they became opened up and British Indian tea came in very abundantly, and there was so much of it, and it's just gone from there. All the Indian black tea and
then we mentioned fruit teas and green tea. Have you ever drunk green tea?
Yes, I think in Britain that's quite a new thing.
It's not so common yet.
It's not so common, but it's quite popular. It's becoming quite popular. I've seen them in the supermarkets, fruit tea and tea with flowers in and things like that.
All kinds of different fruits and flowers and herbs and everything. Put it all in tea. Why not? See what happens.
Then there's a lot of people into herbal tea, which isn't really tea. It's just grass.
Mint tea.
Mint
Do you like
tea,
mint
yes.
tea?
Mint tea is
nice.
Is quite popular.
Yeah, I like mint.
My grandmother used to make it with mint. Put the mint into the
real mint leaves.
Yes, leaves.
Nothing like mint leaves to eat. I found a mint outside a friend's house. I found a bush of mint one day, and I picked a leaf off. I'd never before eaten mint, and I was a grown man, and I really enjoyed it. And every time I get like a drink, you can get a nice cool drink here, mojito.
Yeah.
And it's non-alcoholic. It's nice, like ice cold drink with different fruit flavors.
Yeah.
And I take the mint out and eat it. And I really like that. It's lovely.
Of course, there's a tradition in England of drinking cold tea as well. It was very much a working class thing that they used to take the tea in a bottle to
no time to heat it.
To work. And the Americans drink a lot of cold tea, I believe. If you ask for tea in America, they'd probably give you cold tea.
Really? You have to specify, give me hot tea, please.
And the Americans, of course, make tea. They don't boil the water.
Right, yeah.
They just heat it.
Oh, we need to go and teach them.
Yes.
Have you heard of something called rubus?
No, I have not.
I believe it comes from South Africa, and it's another plant entirely, but I think it's also got good health benefits, and I think it doesn't have caffeine. So maybe look out for that if you're interested. Rubus tea. ROOIBOS.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah. Have a look for that. Maybe if you're you can get it in the UK. I know because I've bought it there. Types of coffee, right? I'm going to dazzle you with my
go on then.
With my knowledge. Well, I've written this down.
See if I know any more that you've missed.
I've written this down in advance. So 4 different types of bean. We're going to get to beans first, right? So Arabica, and sorry if my pronunciation, is a high quality, and it's mostly from Latin America, but found everywhere. And it's about 60% of the world's coffee comes from that. And you'll find it if you grind at home, it's usually Arabica, or if you go to a cafe, it's usually Arabica. Robusta beans, which is twice the amount of caffeine as Arabica, and it comes mainly from Africa, Indonesia. And Liberica is another variety, which is from the Philippines. It's got a woody, smoky flavor, only from the Philippines. And then there's one, it's not used so much, Excelsa, which is about 7% of the world's beans, and it's from Southeast Asia, and it's a tart and fruity flavor. So there are 4 main types of bean, which is, I don't know, I feel like there aren't as many varieties of coffee as there are of tea, but I'm going to argue it's because you can't get better.
Well, I've heard of this Arabica, but I know there are different variants of coffee, because if you go into the coffee shops in London, my grandmother, for example, she used to buy Kenyan Blue Mountain. That was supposed to be very rich, and it is very rich and smooth.
And maybe that was Robusta.
It could be.
More caffeine.
Yes, and the other one, Brazilian, of course.
Right.
But I don't know the different, and
don't know what beans it came from.
I think it's not only the variety, but it's a place in the bush where they get them from, like tea.
Right. Hot, high and low as well.
The most expensive tea is just the tips of the top of the plant.
Right. Wow. And then there's coffee that has been passed through an animal. Is it a cat or is it a
Oh yes,
a
I've heard of that.
We don't want to talk too much about that, but it's been eaten and then come out in the toilet, let's say, of the animal, and then it's used to make coffee. It was very, very expensive. I've never tried it. But
and how they roast it as well, that makes a big difference. The different methods of roasting.
Yeah, maybe more so than the bean.
Yes.
I don't know. Well, and then you've got things like lattes. If you go to the cafe, you've got a latte, a cappuccino, Americano, which is probably my favorite, flat white, and espresso, and lots of different Arabic coffee and all kinds of different. Well, there are quite a lot of different varieties, I suppose. But I feel like it's always essentially the same thing, like the coffee from a bean, and that's it. Whereas tea, I think there's a lot more different types of leaves and stuff. But maybe I'm wrong. Marketing. Do you think tea is marketed better or different to coffee?
I don't know. I know there are a lot of different advertisements for tea and coffee. I think they're all. I've never really thought about that. They all seem to be really the same sort of advertising.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, I mean, I imagine coffee. There's a woman drinking. Maybe it's Kenko or something. Is it Kenko?
Yeah, it's Kenko coffee? Or something.
And she's enjoying this nice black cup of coffee, and just and it's refreshing.
Yes.
But I think the same could be used for tea too. But maybe with not a woman, maybe a man or someone.
The chimpanzees, they advertised, what was it, Brook Bond, PG Tips.
PG Tips was a tea that was advertised with a monkey.
Yes.
That's right. And you used to be able to, not so long ago, they brought the monkey back in their advertisement, and you could buy the toy, actually. Soft toy. Do you think tea is more suitable for kids than coffee?
I think so. I think it's better to give them tea than coffee. Although if, milky coffee, I think is good.
You see, I really should argue for coffee here. I think if you add enough milk to either of them, you're okay. But don't do it too late in the day, in case they will stay awake, and you don't want the kids staying awake at night.
I think cocoa is better for children.
Cocoa's good. Yeah, but coffee might be more healthy than cocoa.
I don't know.
Depends on the cocoa, I suppose.
I think the cocoa makes you sleep if you at night.
Well, yeah, that's true. Where was the best tea or coffee you ever tried?
Well, that was my grandmother's tea and coffee. Going back to how we started, it was she who seemed to make the best of everything for me. I can't get the tea quite the same as she
and a wee biscuit,
made it.
A wee biscuit with it?
Yes, it was biscuits, not sweets. So don't eat sweets in England with tea.
Wee biscuit with your tea or coffee, it's nice. I usually drink it without anything, but, try to have something to eat beforehand, but maybe I will have a biscuit beforehand to get my stomach juices going. So which is the best? This is our $1 million question. Have I not persuaded you that coffee is the best?
Well, I would say once a day, coffee is the best for me. I want a cup of coffee, and that's for me. At that time, it's the best. But at the other times of the day, I think tea is the best. But I do like coffee, different varieties, and it's not that I don't like them. It's just that I don't drink it very often.
Yeah. I'm gonna be controversial. I'm supposed to argue for coffee. I'm gonna say that tea's better, more versatile, more varieties, and you can drink it and through more regularly throughout the day. Maybe not for me, I still wouldn't drink it too late in the day, and it'll give you that level of energy that lasts throughout the day. And I'm going to say tea's better, but I won't drink it. I'm going to drink my coffee 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm still going to stick with my coffee because I love the taste. And I still think that energy boost is great too. So.
Yes, I think I agree.
Yeah. So that was the crack about tea versus coffee. We kind of found out that tea is better, but personally we still love our cup of coffee. Maybe we could say they're both better. I don't know. So we talked about the different, the typical type of tea and coffee, our tea journeys, coffee journeys, how it makes us feel, different types of teas and coffees out there, and the advantages, disadvantages, and the best we've ever had. So that was the crack about tea versus coffee.